Hey, everybody. Evening, Martin. I guess I am on. Okay. Couldn't tell if I was or not. Anybody else out there? Or should I restart this? Hey, Renee. Hey, Ann. Jacqueline. Okay. People popping in.
Let's dance, and that's no idle invitation, ladies and gentlemen, because it comes from Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Hey, everybody.
They take their responsibilities very seriously in purveying good music to the dancing public. And now, an original arrangement by Benny
No, this is the regular tour.
Jingle Bells.
Have I got everything updated here properly? Oh, the titles didn't update. Hang on. Yeah, I can still fix that. I should have changed the title. Hey, Christine. Hey, Betsy. Bill. Hey, Eric. Hey, Heidi. Yeah, I didn't restart the app from this morning, so I got no idea how many are watching. Whatever. Oh, Robert, they got the Turkey Day Trot going, huh? Hey, Katie. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Matter of fact, I got pie. There's a pumpkin. Miles on the desk. Hey, Gladys. Hey, Natalie. Evening, Rodney. Crown Royal. The creaminess of this will go well with the pumpkin. Right, I was. Hey, Jackie, Barry, Mary, Dave and Barb, Mona. Hey, Elizabeth. Yeah, this is a pumpkin pie. Very nice Thanksgiving. Ate myself stupid. Watched the new Beatles movie. Took a nap. Oh, hey, Uncle Dave. And hey, Grandma Belle. Hey, Sarah, Debbie. Miles is on the desk because he wants me to break out the toy that I keep in the desk. He's been up there a while. We'll break it out after the show. The new Beatles thing is fascinating to watch.
Benny Goodman and his orchestra playing in the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel.
Playing a different episode of the Benny Goodman of the Congress Hotel tonight. A little more seasonal. Hey, Jordana. Hey, Geraldine. Jennifer and Ann and Marcia and Ashley and Kathy. Sherry, I am not. Carried that he did. Hey, Kathleen, Timothy. Hey, Georgia. Happy Thanksgiving, Ann. Cranberry vanilla tort. I would eat that. I love the joke about Jimmy Nichols. Love the Who's the Little Old Man shout out at the beginning. Lost your remote. Oh man. It's amazing how often remotes get lost. It seems like there's only so many places they can go. Hey, Alex. Miles, you want to come say hi to everybody? I know you do. And they all liked your picture on Instagram the other day. Over 200 likes. That was really a perfect shot though, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Hardest working cat in the tour business. Hey, Viva and Sarah. Still hanging out on the desk. Alright, Daddy's got to get through about a 45-minute presentation or so. Then we'll break out the mouse toy. Okay? We can show all the people what a good jumper you are.
And that was Helen Ward singing, appearing more bewilderingly lovely than bewildered. And now, an unforgettable Irving Berlin tune, You Forgot to Remember.
Welcome, Karen. What was the state address of Marshall Fields? I don't know the exact numbers. State in Washington. Eventually expanded down to Randolph. Up to Randolph. Hey, Donna. Ah, Bridget, have a good time. Cats wandering around in the background. Miles, why don't you get down too? Hey Beverly, welcome into town. Hey Chris. Welcome Betsy, anybody new here? Alright, we'll give it a few more minutes. We'll let Benny Goodman keep playing. Live from the Joseph Urban Room in the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. Only, 80-some years too late. Seems like a lot of stabbings went on in people's houses today. I'm drinking some Crown Royal myself. Hoping nobody gets any ideas for this rash of stabbings.
Yes, here is these sons of the program. Joe Harris presenting that immortal opus, The Music Goes Around and Around.
Hey back, Missy. On behalf of Miles and Bria. Hey, Teresa. Happy Thanksgiving all around. Miles, no, that's a headphone cable. I've been recording demos all week. It seems like everybody in the comments is stabbing themselves and others for Thanksgiving. Although there are lots of great bargains, unfortunately the sales ended in like 1905. I think I have a couple to go clear up to the 30s. You can see if they'll still honor the ad. But really, at this point, you'd be walking into like the Aldo or the Nordstrom rack where these things used to be. Saying, will you still honor this ad from 1935? I want to buy a muff for $2.75. The gingerbread spice sangria, that sounds good. Have you tried the gingerbread snap Mountain Dew? It's really pretty good. If they called it just gingerbread soda and not gingerbread Mountain Dew, everybody would love it. Alright, we'll let Benny Goodman finish out this song, then we'll go ahead and get started. Find a Gravy Friday, I like it. You'll see if there's somebody named Gravy that I can look up. Somebody with a Thanksgiving appropriate name at Graceland.
The National Broadcasting Company is presenting the music of Benny Goodman and his orchestra from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago.
All right, so we let Benny finish out that song as suggested before. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome along. I'm Adam Seltzer from Mysterious Chicago Tours. Going virtual now. Thank you for joining me on Thanksgiving. I am thankful for all of you, for all of the Mysterians who have been supporting me this last, year and a half now. More than a year and a half now. It's like a year and 8 months if you get down to it. I'm kind of blown away by this. So welcome along. Today we're going to talk about shopping history in Chicago, the history of our great department stores and how they grew up along with American history and interact with all these sociological and societal trends. It's one of my favorite ones to do. It's one that I did kind of on a whim, but it turned out to be just such a fascinating history behind some of these things. And then, as is tradition, I'll show you some of the holiday windows from the old Marshall Fields, which is now the Macy's. I know some people get really mad about it being Macy's now instead of Marshall Fields. I really don't. Marshall Field was a total jerk. I don't care that he lost his name on the store. But all right, so those of you new around here, I'm Adam Seltzer from Mysterious Chicago Tours, author of such books as Mysterious Chicago the Book and The Smart Aleck's Guide to American History, and a brand new one called Murder Maps USA that officially is out this week. I think there's some shipping delays with it, but officially it's out, and Library Journal says that I'm engrossing. I love it when they call me things like that. Also on the History Channel and the Travel Channel all the time, so I am incredibly famous. You should definitely pay attention to whatever I say. Definitely not as famous as Miles here. You might be able to see him sitting on the desk, just kind of hanging out and biding his time. So, all right, everybody, welcome along. We're going to start back in the old days here. Well, this is how Chicago looked back in about 1812 or so. You got Fort Dearborn off in the distance there. That's right about where the London Guarantee building would be now. And over to the left, the fort they had the little house that by then was the home of a guy by the name of John Kinsey. Just to put this in perspective, this is what stands where the fort is now. Alfred Alschuler's London Guarantee Building. And over where the Kinsey House is now, the former home of Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, is what is now the Magnificent Mile. Now, we don't really know what John Kinsey looks like. There are a few different pictures that are often said to be him. They're really supposed to be of his son. It was said by people who knew him that he looked exactly like this particular British politician. How the hell anybody knew what this guy even looked like at the time is, frankly, anybody's guess. But he was had a job as the sutler, the guy who was selling pretty much all of the supplies to the people at Fort Dearborn. They were required to buy most of their goods from him, and as the sole person able to sell the goods, he was able to set his own price. He got the job by being related to one of the officers, and of course was fabulously corrupt. That's one of the nicer things you could honestly say about John Kinsey. There's a lot of other nastier things. Well, we won't bother with it too much today. But some other places, right down around where Wolf Point is now, or just across from that, over at about Wacker and Lake, what is now Wacker and Lake, stood a place called the Sauganash Hotel, which was not really a hotel so much as it was a tavern. The Davy Crockett lookalike here over on the left is H.O. Stone. You might know him from the Rosalie Cemetery tours. He's the one who went back to his home in upstate New York, married a 16-year-old Frances Pierce. Then when she died, made this magnificent statue that still stands for her at Rosalie Cemetery. And then went back to upstate New York and married another 16-year-old who grew up to be known as the sternest and most severe, prim and proper old lady that any of the kids in the neighborhood had ever met. Over to the left is one of our earliest stores there, the early store known as Philo Carpenter's Drugstore. Philo Carpenter shows up on a lot of these tours as well. He was a big active member of the abolitionist movement. And right about where it now stands, once upon a time, was the side of the Marshall Field Warehouse. So we're looking right about just above the T where it says Thompson Center right now, over there in the top left-hand corner. This is the Chicago of the 1812s and the 1830s. Now, at the time, you'll also see that it has this elephant trunk bend over here. Let me move myself down a little bit. You see, nowadays, the river just would go right along the top of my head here and go straight out into Lake Michigan. In those days, up until the 1830s, it had this elephant trunk bend, and then went down and rejoined the lake down at about Madison Street. So this started to change around in the 1830s. They brought in a guy named Orsemus Morrison who had worked on the Erie Canal. But at the time, the biggest street in Chicago was Lake Street. This is what it looks like today. Definitely not one of our big retail hubs anymore. It's kind of blocked off by the L tracks there. But this is what it looked like when Chicago first really started to grow in the 1840s or the 1850s or so. We'll come back to how the Erie Canal ties into all of this. But among the bigger things here were the Tremont House. This was the hotel owned by the Couch Brothers, if you've been on Grave Robbing 101 or the Rosalie Cemetery tour. And the biggest shop was a place called L.D. Olmsted & Co. Fancy and staple dry goods. Cash for the fancy goods. Fash for the staple goods. Fash for the dry goods. Cash for the hogshead, cask, and demijohn. 142 Lake Street, Chicago. Keep constantly on hand one of the largest and most desirable stocks of dry goods to be found west of the city of New York. Other places they were selling, things like menswear. This was the biggest store there at the time. They eventually had competition from T.B. Carter offering shawls! A large and choice lot of shawls, near every style and kind, comprising broche long and square shawls of white, blue, green, drab, and crimson centers. Plain cashmeres, blue, green, drab, and black. Printed cashmere, suitable for the present season. Black and colored silk and white and black crepe. Bay State long and square do as good as ever. Morning shawls of various styles and prices. Opera shawls, crepe. It's like, what if you have to go to the opera and you only have a morning shawl? What if you have to go to a funeral and you only have an opera shawl? You got to be really careful about this kind of stuff. T.B. Carter is now up at Graceland Cemetery. Well, here's something about TB Carter's. To raise the wind, there are various ways of doing this, but a good one during the 94-ish sort of weather I had hereabouts from the 13th to the 15th of June is to go to TB Carter's, 118 Lake Street, and buy a 3-cent palm leaf fan and commence vibrating it to and fro. A very respectable breeze can be got up in this way on short, no ice. It is not everybody who keeps these 3-cent fans. Being in Troy, New York last year in some of the meltingest kind of weather, we tried to get one and couldn't. Now, what you're seeing here is kind of an early version of a storm of advertising that would start to gel a little bit more in the early 20th century. What really makes people want to buy stuff is fear. Like fear of it. What if it gets hot and you don't have a 3-cent fan? I love that they had to explain exactly how a fan works in this sort of thing. And just because I like to throw this stuff off, here's Mr. Carter over at Graceland Cemetery. And then over where Dick Blick is now, the art supply shop, over on State Street, an early State Street retailer would have been this home of ladies' trimmings, Mrs. Carberry's place. We don't know a whole lot about Mrs. Carberry. She is thought to be the first major woman merchant operating in Chicago. Really, we don't know a whole lot other than just what it says in this ad. But she has an extensive assortment of Zephyr worsteds, a complete assortment of hosiery for men, women, and children, whale boxes, hooks and eyes, gloves, combs, yarn, tooth and hair brushes, willow baskets. Everything you need for life in Chicago in the 1850s. But also, if you're going to be buying stuff at this time, next to it, when I was looking up the ad for this, I found this fantastic one. Invisible ventilating heads of hair. An infallible, because they have this infallible mode of measuring the head. But they also notice, ladies furnishing their own hair or that of deceased friends or relatives can have it made into any of the following articles of an endless variety of beautiful and substantial patterns, which can be seen in the subscribers' rooms. Bracelets, armlets, negligees, finger rings, eardrops, crosses, ladies and gents' neck chains, watch cards, flowers, wreaths, etc. I just want to point this out. You could have the hair of your dead friend made into a negligee. So, you just imagine playing a prank on your husband like that. So, remember that friend of mine that you were always looking at, that I was always saying you were looking at all the time? She's dead. Guess what this negligee is made of, honey? Honey. But these stores probably looked about like this on the inside. This isn't an actual shot of the inside of any of these. I'm not sure any of those really exist from this era, but it would have been about like this. And right in the middle of this came young Potter Palmer. Looks like he ought to be on an oatmeal box in this place, and he was in fact a Quaker. He had been operating in Lockport, New York. Over in Lockport, New York, he worked for a Quaker by the name of George Fox, and as a Quaker, Mr. Fox did not believe in bargaining. Now, in stores like this, it would have been the norm not to have set prices. You bargained and haggled over every little thing. Mr. Fox was a Quaker, didn't believe in that. But while working in Lockport one day, where a lot of stone from the quarries were coming in, Potter Palmer, this young man, saw an order that was going out for all the stone that was being bought for the new courthouse in Chicago. And he figured, wow, that's really something. I've got to go see that myself. This must be a really bustling city if they're buying that much stone. So he got there at a time when Lake Street had become the city of the street of merchants, as seen here. At the time in Chicago, we had about one merchant per every 90 people. That's quite a lot of stuff. So he immediately got himself a parcel of land over on Lake Street to rent out a store. Rented it from a guy by the name of John High, who is also over at Graceland. Then went back to New York City to wander around A.T. Stewart's Marble Palace. A.T. Stewart was operating this huge department store in New York. Later he would be grave robbed. And wandered around and took a look at things like the sewing room and everything that was going on in there, trying to figure out how better to run a store for himself. So he opened his own store. And right in 1857, there came this massive fire on Lake Street that wrecked a whole lot of stuff, killed John High, the guy who had rented Potter Palmer the space, and left a lot of people saying things like, the store is crowded from morning to night, everyone gets a bargain, large stock of goods of every other description. Having fire sales. But this also left open a whole lot of extra space for Potter Palmer to build himself a whole new store, Potter & Co. Here's how he looked by the age of 35. Wait, that's 35? He looks 55. People tended to in those days. 35 was old in those days. But operated a store that looked about like this. It wasn't quite as grand as A.T. Stewart's place, but it was very nice. In 1858, it was described like this. One of our best established and most widely remote, who removes from his old stand on the south side of Lake Street and 1 block west, carrying with him to new quarters a business reputation of standing at itself a fortune to any house, and prepared or rather necessitated by actual demands of the business. The West Division is devoted to a magnificent sales room fitted up tastefully and well, and after the manner of first-class stores and the manner of securing convenience and comfort to shoppers, everything here and as elsewhere on the premises is subject to the necessary and inviolate rule of a perfect system, and much to the convenience of patron and the advantages of all parties. This does not make me want to shop there particularly. But Potter Palmer was realizing that the world was starting to change at the time. People like Elizabeth Cady Stanton were the early rumblings of the modern feminist movement. They weren't really in the 1850s having a whole lot of luck with suffrage, but they found that even women were a kind of a difficult audience for that. But her big thing was saying you should go out and buy. You should go out and shop unaccompanied. You are the wife. You should have access to all of the family finances. If you need a new stove, you just go get a new stove. Don't ask permission, just get it. So Potter Palmer saw that this was starting to happen and decided to cater his business almost entirely to women shoppers. Now, other shoppers came in as well, but he didn't do haggling. He didn't have a whiskey barrel for the old farmers to gather around or anything like that. This was shopping where women could come in unaccompanied. Also, he came up with this particular ad. This may be one of the most substantial ads ever published in the retail trade. Notice to country customers. I will send by express to customers in any part of the country promptly patterns of different styles of dress goods, silks, shawls, cloaks, and embroideries, any kind of dry goods. The idea was that if you didn't like what he sent you, you could send it back for a full refund. Having a return policy like this was thought to be business suicide by people. But he found that not only did people not abuse it, but it also allowed for everybody to go, for people to buy a whole lot more than they would have before. People were much more willing to take the risk. So he operated this place through the early 1860s, and in addition to seeing the early rumblings of the feminist movement, he also saw that war was coming with the South and invested in a whole lot of cotton goods right before the Civil War started. So he had a huge supply of cotton on hand right when the price of cotton absolutely skyrocketed. Now, in the early 1860s, he also hired young Marshall Field, who never looked better than he does right over here. Field even had a business card made up for himself when he was working at the company of Cooley, Farwell & Co., importers and jobbers of dry goods. Dry is always a good description when we're talking about Marshall Field. Now, he had started out working for these guys at a salary of about $400 a year, managed to save half of it, bought into it, became Farwell & Field in 1864, Cooley, Farwell & Field. But he didn't really get along with Mr. Farwell, so he went to the McCormick brothers and borrowed money to buy out the partners. I will say the McCormick brothers were terrible human beings. Nothing more about them needs to be said. The fact that Marshall Field was apparently friendly with them says quite a lot about the guy. But at the time, the main business district remained on Lake Street, as indicated here over by this arrow. But right around 1865, Potter Palmer sold out to Marshall Field right before the Civil War ended. This meant that Marshall Field & Company had now bought this entire stock of goods in a store right before prices absolutely plummeted. Now, meanwhile, Potter Palmer had been suffering from ill health. He had taken the offer to sell out, mainly because he wanted to go traveling around a while, but found himself with a whole lot more money. Field and later went back to him and said, please, please buy us back out. He wouldn't do it, but he bought back in and maintained a stake. Well, what he did really was, when he went to Paris, he saw the effects of housemanization. This is a thing where they were kind of modernizing Paris, turning it from a medieval city into a modern city. If you notice the Paris street on a rainy day, the painting that's right there at the Art Institute, if you look in the background, you can see these scaffoldings over the buildings. That's Haussmannization in progress. And he kind of realized that things were going to change in Chicago. Lake Street wasn't going to be the main business district forever. Eventually, it would be one that went away from the smelly river. He figured State Street was going to be where things were going to go. So he sold some land right there on State Street to Marshall Field. But meanwhile, he was also building up his own famous hotel, which he's, of course, much better known for. So in the late 1860s, they built their new Marshall Field building right here and started carrying things beyond just regular dry goods. They started carrying Yankee notions. Things like braids, buttons, and bows, ribbons, spool, cottons, umbrellas, sun umbrellas, and small wares over at Field, Palmer, and later. But then, 1871, just a couple of years after they built this thing, the Great Chicago Fire shows up. Wrecks all of the department stores. But of course, in Chicago, people started rebuilding almost immediately. There's the famous William D. Kerfoot, who immediately built this clapboard real estate office with a sign on the left, all gone but wife, children, and energy. Field and his partners ran and rented a place over in the South Loop area to operate a store and just put up a sign where their old store used to be saying, "Cash boys and work girls will be paid what is due them." They kept all of their staff, the cash boys and work girls in particular, on site and continued to pay them, which frankly wasn't that much of an outlay. The cash boys made something like $2 a week, which even at the time was just ridiculously low salary. Field used to famously say that if one of my employees could just save 15 cents a week, in a couple of years that would be thousands of dollars. Math is hard, Marshall. To saving 15 cents a week, you'll get to a couple $1,000s in about 250 years. But eventually they built themselves a fine new store with things like a gigantic jewelry department. But really, it wasn't the retail store that was making them their money. In fact, for several years, the retail store on State Street was operating at a loss. The real money maker for Field was the warehouse site, which was located right where the arrow is pointing here. Let's go see that site really quick. Here's what it looks like today. Long gone, but it was selling wholesale to other stores in far-flung parts of the country is where they made their money. This was their original warehouse building, their wholesale showroom. This was designed for them by Henry Hobson Richardson, who comes up quite a bit on the tours as well. He designed things such as the O.W. Potter Mausoleum at Graceland Cemetery, and the Glessner House down on Prairie Avenue. But there was one guy in the Marshall Field organization in particular who just absolutely loved the retail business and understood that the reason that the wholesale business was thriving so much is because of the name, because everybody wanted Marshall Field goods, because it was really the retail store that made it famous enough to make the wholesale business prosper. So over in the midst of it, and here's Marshall Field's as it looks today, or as it looked about the 1880s, 1890s era, as it started to expand and expand and expand. He brought in a general manager by the name of Harry Selfridge. Now, Harry Selfridge was a real dynamic, go-getting kind of individual. He came up with a lot of new ideas for what he wanted to do with the store. Besides the return policy, he was the guy who really pioneered window displays. Other people had done it at other stores, but Marshall Field suddenly had the best window displays anywhere and had them lit up at night so people could walk by and take a look at them. He started expanding things like the silks. He started expanding the yard goods. He expanded a lot more telephones. He had a whole staff of people that were known as the Hello Girls because they said hello quite a lot. Expanded the jewelry department, started opening up things like the dining rooms in the 1890s. Now, by doing all of this, over the course of about 6 years, and of course things like the Walnut Room, and one of the particular things he did was appealing to the Christmas time shoppers. And by doing this, he raised profits by about 500% by 50% in just 6 years. He had raised their advertising up by 500%. So here's one of the ads that he had here. 1896, they were still using fairly basic ads. Getting things like drawings into the ads is something Marshall himself probably had to be dragged into kicking or screaming. We allow no misstatement, no exaggeration, and even the slightest degree to enter into any of our announcements. Every statement is made in our advertisements that can be absolutely depended upon. Our prices are unquestionably the lowest in Chicago. That was absolute nonsense. Marshall Field was kind of an upscale place compared to some of the others. But 1903, he had pioneered announcing in the ads how many shopping days were left until Christmas. Yeah, that doesn't add any to the stress of the world. No, not at all. Let's see what they were selling in 1903 here. Alaska seal coats, $195. That's in the neighborhood of $6 or $7 grand today. Moleskin sets, $47.50. Fine furniture, elaborately designed costumes, wraps, blankets, comforters. There's one from 1905 when we're down to only 25 shopping days till Christmas. And selling women's black broadcloth coats in 4 models at $20 a throw. It's like $500 or $600 a day, if you adjust for inflation. Also, don't forget to get your kid gloves for Christmas. But interestingly, this would have been December 1st, so we're looking at about 2 weeks after Marshall Field Jr. died, under fairly mysterious circumstances. Officially, it was an accident. Marshall Field made known that all of this advertising would be pulled from your paper. And you can see it's a lot of advertising. These are just like small samples of it. If they breathed that there was anything scandalous about the death of Marshall Field Jr. Though almost everybody in town heard that he had really been shot over at the Everleigh Club. Now, the problem is, Marshall Field did not really take good care of Mr. Selfridge. He paid him very well, but he didn't really treat him very well. He didn't treat anybody all that well. And Selfridge finally decided, listen, I've raised your profits by 50%. I've done this, this, and this. I want the field to be called Marshall Field and Selfridge from now on. I want to be made an actual partner in this. And when Field just said, oh, no, we're not doing anything like that, he gave his 2 weeks' notice. And Field said, well, you can leave tomorrow if you feel like it. So he did. So Selfridge announced that he was opening up a new store. This morning at 8 o'clock, we assume ownership and control of the business, which for many years under the name Schlesinger of Meyer has been located at the corner of State and Madison Streets. Hereafter, this beautiful building will be occupied by H.G. Selfridge & Co. Now here's Mr. Selfridge himself. His wife, Rosalie, is also very interesting. Before she married him, she was a real estate developer. There's still a place down in Hyde Park called Rosalie Village, a whole neighborhood of buildings designed by Solon Beeman, who also did the whole neighborhood of Pullman. I don't know why we haven't done a mini tour out there yet. We're going to go to Rosalie Village one day pretty soon here. It's kind of like a miniature Pullman. But this was all built into the famous building that is now the Target, designed by Louis Sullivan. Right at State and Madison Street, just a block down from Marshall Field. Trouble is, Field still had all of the good talent here. Now, this was an absolutely bustling location at the time. This is Chicago, the State and Madison Street in the early 20th century. Late 19th, early 20th. Bustling location. Trouble is, Field still had most of the talent. Most of the really good clerks, most of the really good managers, they were still working for Marshall Field. So within just a year, he announced that he was selling out to Carson, Peary, and Scott. But he sold it at a profit, so he didn't actually end up making money at it. He decided, I'm super rich. I'm just going to retire. That didn't really hold. He didn't really hold out too long on that. He got bored very quickly, ended up moving to London and starting the Selfridge's department store over there. But here it is Carson, Peary, Scott. And here's one of their ads from 1908 with only 22 shopping days remaining till Christmas. Everybody was copying out about this. They're selling black pony coats, garments of rare beauty, very moderate in price, women's suits reduced, women's coats, special values in new waists. Excellent suggestion in toilet goods, Christmas dolls of all kinds, fitted traveling cases are practical, leather goods are always acceptable, gifts of sterling toiletware. Hairbrushes $4.50, military brushes $7.50 a pair, men's or women's combs $1.50, cloth brushes. That had better been a really nice comb, to be perfectly honest. Holiday umbrellas $3 to $4. But these guys, like Marshall Field, cater to what they would have called the carriage trade, the upscale crowds. So just down the street, down about where the Akira is now, they're open in the 1870s, a somewhat lower priced a store, but just as nice looking, called The Fair. Now, it started out just looking like a regular kind of Wild Westy building. It just even said The Fair, cheap. But then they expanded to look about like this, and then expanded even further to eventually look like this. From all outward appearances, it looked a lot like Marshall Field's, but it was much more lower priced on the inside. Here's one of their ads. The Fair, largest and grandest store in the world, rapidly being pushed to completion. Shirtwaist 98 cents, boys suits $1.50, millinery 25 cents, 10-cent handkerchiefs, 35-cent sugar. Ladies' skirts here only $4.99 compared to we were looking at twice that at Marshall Field's. Velvet capes $3.75. Bicycle shoes. Ooh, syringes 21 cents. For a 2-quart fountain syringe. That's a big syringe. On the inside, it still looked really fairly nice. I would say just about the equal to the Field place. And they too are now at Graceland Cemetery. It's a little stately mausoleum that looks kind of like the White House. Now nearby was one that you can still see a sign for. If you look up there in the middle, we'll zoom in a bit. You can still see a sign for the Boston store, which stood over across the corner from the Carson Perry Scott, and a Holabird and a Roche building, eventually occupied by the Sears, though that's gone by now. But this was the Boston store. Looked like this at the time. It was especially known for its grill. We'll check out one of their ads, too, see what they had. This is an ad from 1935. 98-cent perfume, 89-cent makeup, drugs, millinery sets for $3.50. No, military sets. So also somewhat lower priced. Didn't really go for the carriage trade quite as much. Well, they had a book section including a collegiate dictionary and discovery by Richard Byrd. And of course, I can't cover the old-time Chicago era without covering one of my favorites, Western Hall. Over on Randolph Street, a frantic appeal to the citizens of Chicago. Why will you buy clothing at any other house when you can get better styles and finer goods at lower prices at Western Hall? These guys had a lot of fun with their advertising. They didn't push the hard sell. They didn't try to scare you into things, at least in any serious way. But they did kind of suggest you have been paying for too much for clothing. If you seek proof, call it Western Hall. And Christmas comes but once a year. We're giving you a handsome Christmas gift with every article of clothing sold during the holidays at Western Hall. Then eventually they started hiring this guy who was a poet to do their ads for them. I won't read you this entire poem. It goes on quite a while. I'll just read the last verse. Then sat he down with all hope dead, until of Western Hall he read. 72 Randolph Street he sought, a suit of Dagnan's cut he bought, and hastening home again to try, read triumph in the nymph's bright eye. Joy, joy, he cried, my advice to all is buy your clothes at Western Hall. Now, this attracted quite a bit of notice at the time. The Chicago Tribune said the bard of Western Hall, whoever he be, has certainly achieved an enviable local notoriety and invested the house he has immortalized with a strange historic interest. Here we are still talking about it 160 years later. And though he is reported as the recipient of a princely salary, could evidently leave footprints in the sand of time in some other branch of literature. I don't think anybody ever found out who exactly the Bard of Western Hall was. But they also ran one of my very favorite ads of all time. 1865, after we took Richmond back from the Confederates in the Civil War, they ran this one. Richmond has fallen. And so have our prizes at Western Hall Clothing House. It's like something you could see in The Simpsons, isn't it? Now, we'll cut ahead a little bit in the history to in the late 1970s as shopping malls took over in retail. Chicago decided, let's turn State Street into a mall. They closed State Street to traffic. You couldn't drive down it for a while, though buses still could, which kind of defeated the entire purpose. One of the many things, kind of turning it into one big outdoor mall. Now, this was opened with all due ceremony in 1979, though it very quickly started to smell like bus exhaust fumes. But it seemed like an attractive idea. This is about what State Street looked like at the time. It had fallen into disrepair. The Chicago Theater, you can see on the left over here, was operating as a movie house. And right now they're showing a vampire double feature of Love at First Bite and Blackula. But it was built up as a more or less pedestrian area with a lot of artwork very typical of late 70s, early 80s malls. But it was generally considered a disaster in the end. Eventually, in the 1990s, they made State Street into a regular street again. And now, as part of our tradition here, I've got a couple of years' worth of Marshall Field windows to look at. These are the ones from last year. We'll let them run through again. The colors of last year were just really terrific. Even though Marshall Field's is now the Macy's, they still keep a lot of the Marshall Field signage up. They have the old clock up. They've still got the plaque that says Marshall Field & Co. And they've kept up the tradition of the windows. They started being articulate and elaborated and articulated like that, like a moving, waving. I've seen footage of that back to at least the 1950s and probably earlier than that, too. These ones, they never quite have anything in, these two. These couple. Having the perfume counters up front was a Harry Selfridge development. A lot of things that we now see that it now just comes standard with department stores, like having a bargain basement, having the perfume counter up front to make the whole place smell nice. Those were generally Harry Selfridge ideas, to which Marshall Field had to be dragged kicking and screaming. Now, I once took a tour of this place with a school group, and they talked about the day that Marshall Field saw all these women waiting to have tea when a woman hosted a gathering here, and a light bulb went off over his head. It's like, no light bulb ever went off over Marshall Field's head. Then just around the corner from this was one other. I just had to show this one off, because there's a baby Yoda. Hey, little Grogu. All right, but let's check out how they look this year. Once again, the clock is still a thing. The Marshall Field sign is still a thing. Was this last year's again? Yeah, that's last year's again. Sorry about that. Here we go. This year, it is all about a reindeer named Tiptoe, who is here to teach us that anything is possible if you believe. We'll tell the whole story here. The story of Tiptoe. Once upon a time in the land of the ice and snow, there was an honorable reader by the name of Tiptoe. You could totally sing that Led Zeppelin. Up in the land of the ice and snow, an adorable reindeer named Tiptoe. Hammer of the gods, together with a polar bear and penguin, a trio so dear, the magic of friendship, days filled with laughter and cheer. The meter here is not great. But let's see the whole story of Tiptoe. Here's Tiptoe learning to fly from an owl who ought to know. Off to flight school to chase their dreams, where the wise old owl teaches magic schemes. Reindeer near and far come to prepare us for Santa's test. Practice makes perfect, he takes only the best. The anything is possible if you believe sign is a repeated theme all over the building this year. That's a good thing. As Christmas draws near, Tiptoe studies late into the night, friends by her side to provide encouragement and warm light. But her confidence is low, she is simply too shy. Maybe next year, she says with a sigh. Poor Tiptoe. She doesn't believe in herself. Chapter 3. Polar Bear and Penguin knew they had to act fast. We need a plan before Christmas has passed. They gathered their friends to plot a clever scheme. That's it! We'll create our own flying machine. The seesaw goes down and Tiptoe takes flight. That's what friends are for. Sheer delight. I dropped the very there to make the meter work better. And there she is with a Da Vinci-style flying machine. I think Santa's going to notice if you use that, Tiptoe. But maybe it'll help you build your confidence. Oh, there was a balloon for Tiptoe in the parade? I guess he figured a little bit of the flying. This scene not appearing in this story. And here's where Tiptoe went to the jewelry counter. This is actually a pretty cool shot here. Don't look down now. She can't believe she's this high. A flock of feathered friends keeps Tiptoe in the sky. Little does she know the rope is untying. Not until she hears them all cheer, "You did it! You're flying!" Oh, so this is like the magic toe shoes, where you think the shoes are magic, so you dance better. Then it turns out it was you all along. I love the skyline there, though. We got this view of... This would probably be from the South Loop area, based on where the Sears is and where the Hancock is. It would have been back where I pointed there a second ago. All right, Christmas is here, and it's time to pull Santa's sleigh. Her fears are now gone, and she is up and away. And with the gift of courage that she has received from this day forward, Tiptoe knew anything was possible. Oh, and with the gift of courage that she has received from that day forward, Tiptoe knew anything was possible. She just had to believe. And it don't matter if you put a couple of extra syllables into a line. What a good week for Tom Lehrer shout-outs. And there she goes. Also, let's just check out this skyline down below here. See, now I don't think this is Chicago. I think this is Houston. This is one of those cities where you got downtown and then you're in the sticks. It's one of those cities with no Brooklyn. And we'll pause just a second here to show their other window for all of your friends who like to dress up like Batman villains. And hey, who's that handsome guy? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Time to move on to the closing. You know, I forgot to add what the upcoming tours are, but I will tell you, Sunday morning is going to be Tales of the Gold Coast. And of course, we do morning mini tours every day at 10 o'clock. Tomorrow is going to be Find a Grave Friday. There won't be an 8 p.m. tour next Thursday, a week from today, because I will be in Washington, D.C. But there will be some really interesting tours, I imagine, throughout the course of that particular day. So just watch out for... Now, should you need a Mysterious Chicago t-shirt, hoodie, etc., etc., just check out cafepress.com/MysteriousChicago. They've got whatever you need. And with that, everybody, I will put the Benny Goodman back on, and we will just hang out like we always do. Thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. Thanks for coming out on a Thanksgiving night. Though I hope you're all in as big of a turkey coma as I am thankful for all of you, the Mysterians.
The suburban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago. And it is necessary to say, get happy.
There's Benny Goodman with Get Happy. Now, Dana, they're pretty strict about cell phones over there at the Dylan concerts. Elizabeth, yes, Rudolph was part of a Montgomery Ward ad campaign. We've actually been to the grave of the guy who wrote the song. One day when we found Babyface Nelson faster than I would have expected, some people noted, hey, that same guy is in the cemetery. They called him like Rudolph's father on the gravestone. Oh, thanks, Nancy. I thank you. And Miles thanks you. And Priya is back there on the couch. We'll get the toy out in just a minute, Miles. I'm just thanking all the nice people. Yeah, look, Octavio, that's a really good question. I have a lot of questions about Tiptoe. Just a lot of questions. Not the least of which are, does she in fact have toes? Do reindeer have toes? And when she walks on tiptoe, do you hear the sound like... Hey, no one on YouTube. Yeah, you know, some of those lines could have been very easily fixed. You know? I hear they're setting off traditional Thanksgiving fireworks in my neighborhood. Okay, Miles, here, let me make this sign a little bit smaller. Most people here already know the details. And of course, on the Patreon, you get up to 4 posts a week of cool stuff.
And they loved it, they loved it. You could never enjoy being blue until you hear Benny Goodman play the Basin Street Blues.
This week, we've been talking about the time the hyena escaped from the zoo and ended up at Graceland Cemetery in 1897. The hyena's name was Jim. Somebody on the tour lately asked me, how did they know its name was Jim? I was like, looked on its underwear, I guess. Same way I used to know my name was Montgomery Ward. Okay, Miles. Yeah, you have to let it go. No, Miles, you're not running away with me here. Whoa, great one. Now you're showing them. You want to show them one of your big jumps? One of your big jumps? Oh, that's a good one. Well, you're too good at catching this thing. Alright, wow. I'm sure a lot of kids are going to love Tiptoe, though. I guess every generation deserves their own version of the magic was really you all along story. Kind of like every generation deserves its own scrappy band of misfits win the big game. And then in 15 years, the kids who are enjoying it now will look it up on YouTube and realize, wow, I was pretty easily entertained back then. As we all do. I don't know if I'll write a Christmas story about Chicago. I did once post a thing on a webpage claiming that Frosty the Snowman was based on a real story that happened in Logan Square, where some kids, at least according to legend, actually did make a snowman come to life, and there's like a blurry picture of it that was in the papers. Problem is, it's one of those things where you post it and people think you're telling the truth. So... I thought it was obviously a joke, but no, some people really are quite ready to believe that there's an urban legend about a snowman coming to life in Logan Square that inspired the song. Some even seem to think that maybe it really happened. I suppose it's better they spend their time on those kind of conspiracies than the more damaging ones. Uh-oh, guys. The mouse is trapped. There we go. There's a Christmas witch? Maybe I could do a Christmas, I could write a Christmas story, I guess. I wouldn't be the first Jew to write a Christmas classic, that's for sure. It's like, you know why there aren't more Hanukkah carols? Because all the Jewish songwriters were busy writing all of the Christmas carols. Oh, Aubrey Plaza wrote about the Christmas witch. Okay, I could get behind that. Once I get this thing out, they just go nuts for this thing. It's just a mouse on a very thin wire. You know, I'll tell you my favorite Christmas song is "'Tis the Damn Season" off of last year's Evermore record by Taylor Swift. It's about this girl who goes back to her hometown and meets up with her ex-boyfriend and says, okay, we'll just call it even. We'll be a couple again for the weekend before I go back to L.A. Because 'tis the damn season. And I'm so glad that the follow-up song to it, Dorothea, that indicates that she went back to L.A. is not as good of a song, but I'm really glad that it exists, because otherwise I would worry that after 'tis the damn season, she decided to move back to her hometown and learn to love Christmas, like some damn Hallmark movie. And I can't get behind that. Cass, where did you take that mouse? Okay, the cats have run off with the mouse.
Like gems of ruby, with the stars reflected in the rubies, lips like honey drips, that's your lips.
Someone's got one of the great opening lines. If I wanted to know who you were hanging with while I was gone, I would have asked you. There's a lot of story in that one line. Yes, yes, Karen, we know you don't like her. Guys, where did you take that mouse? I see that you want to play more, but I need to know where you took it. Okay, clear over here.
And if your memory goes back far enough, you'll recognize this tune, the Limehouse Blues. It's still got a lot of dancing in it.
Karen, that was a valid excuse 12 years ago. If you made up your mind about Taylor when she was 18, she's in her 30s now. Up until recently, I had, on a given Taylor album, including Red, there's like 3 or 4 songs that I really like, and the rest I'm kind of indifferent to. But then her last 3, Lover, Evermore, and Folklore, has just been one good song after another.
And how they love those fast ones. And now, Benny Goodman signs off with Someday, Sweetheart.
Like, Red is a very good album. That is one where I feel like I would have, if I had been a 14-year-old girl at one point, I might like it more. As it is, I feel like it's like listening to somebody pick arguments with me for 70 minutes. But there are some songs I like on it, even a few that I love. Well, you know, you can groom anybody you want to is the next big thing. If they don't have the chops, they won't last that long. And sometimes even if they do. I think Katy Perry's a very good songwriter, but she's started to just lean into being a nostalgia act now. Haven't watched Hawkeye yet, no. I was too busy with the Beatles. Am I going to have leftover turkey to take with me tomorrow? I don't know where I would take it. Wait, what about Alan Alda? Now I'm worried about Alan Alda. Check my phone for Alan Alda news. Nothing coming up on Twitter, so... Oh, okay, that Hawkeye. Okay, confusing. Different Hawkeye. When I think Alan Alda, I still think Arnie Vinnick from The West Wing.
We have presented the variegated and very danceable rhythms of Benny Goodman and his orchestra. From the Joseph...
Wait, I'll be doing a live Find a Grave Friday tomorrow, but I usually eat when I get home from those.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
It's kind of messy to eat them in the car.
WEAS, New York.
Beverly, no, it was actually fairly warm in Chicago today. It was about 50. But it's dropped down to the 20s over the course of the night. Okay, Cats, you're starting to get tired now, okay? I think you just knocked an ear off of the mouse. Yep, okay, well, just like Gallus Mag, according to Herbert Asbury, they have bitten off an ear. They're just like Mike Tyson, I guess. Bridget, I don't know if we're doing anything with Patty yet in the next couple of days. Traditionally, it's been a WGN Thanksgiving leftover night. Debbie, yes, it can.
Joe Harris presenting that immortal opus, The Music Goes Around and Around.
I don't know if I've driven a Prius over 85 miles an hour, because once I get to 85, I'm way over the speed limit. But yeah, definitely over 65. I am impressed that they managed to... It took this long for the mouse ear to come off. Because they do some hardcore playing with that thing, as you guys can see. Do I ice skate? Not presently, but I was thinking of getting some ice skates. There's a rink out back. A Whiskey and a Cookie tomorrow night will be on the Patty Vasquez Show Facebook page. Patty Vasquez Show. That'll be tomorrow night at 6:30. I imagine Lauren Babert's voicemail box will be full, but I got a pretty good prank in mind for her. Yeah, sure. It's not every week, but many weeks on Whiskey and a Cookie, I leave a prank voicemail to somebody. Like lately, I called Paul Gosser and just did my impression of Burgess Meredith from Rocky, saying, you know, we all know that if you actually fought AOC, she'd fold you into some type of brochure within a second. But I'm going to train you, so when you last 3 seconds before she kicks your ass so far up your butt you're looking at your tonsils and thinking hemorrhoids, and they carry you out on a stretcher, everybody will say, hey, that's Mix Boy.
And it isn't necessary to say, get happy.
Well, Debbie, I can ice skate. I'm not great at it. It's my balance that gets at me. Alright, I see that my parents are already asleep. So I feel like it's probably time for me to go too. So I will see you all back here tomorrow morning for Find a Grave Friday. Next full-length tour is Sunday morning. It'll be virtual Tales of the Gold Coast. Then next Thursday I will be in Washington, D.C. So I don't know if we'll be able to do... We probably won't be able to do Find a Grave Friday next week, but tomorrow is still to go. We'll be doing some cool stuff from Washington, D.C. while I'm there. I'll figure it out as I go. But everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. I am Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours. Thanks for joining me on this Thanksgiving. I am so thankful for all of you, the wonderful Mysterians. So thanks, everybody. I am Adam Seltzer. Have a great night. Stay safe, stay strong, stay full, and of course, stay spooky, everybody.